President Barack Obama says the United States is going on the offensive against Islamic State militants that could one day pose a threat to America's homeland. VOA's Michael Bowman reports that President Obama will address the nation on Wednesday as Congress returns to work after a 5-week recess.
The brutality, militancy, and fanaticism of Islamic State fighters pose long-term threats beyond Syria and Iraq, according to President Obama, who spoke on NBC's Meet the Press television program.
We are going to systematically degrade their capabilities. We're going to shrink the territory that they control. And ultimately, we're going to defeat them.
But in his speech Wednesday, Mr. Obama plans to set limitations on U.S. engagement.
This is not going to be an announcement about U.S. ground troops. This is not the equivalent of the Iraq War.
It is an urgent concern to strike while ISIS is vulnerable.
The initiative is long overdue, according to Republican Senator Ted Cruz.
What we ought to have is a direct, concerted, overwhelming air campaign to take them out.
Lawmakers return to Washington with urgent domestic priorities like extending federal spending authority and averting another government shutdown, but with an increasingly wary eye towards conflict and chaos from Eastern Europe to the Middle East. Congressman Peter King.
Considering we have ISIS, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and core Al-Qaeda, all of whom have the ability and the goal of attacking the United States, we certainly have to be more vigilant than ever.
King says President Obama need not seek congressional authority to strike against Islamic State fighters. Democrat Adam Smith says more important than Congress's blessing to act is the formation of a broad coalition.
If the U.S. acts without Sunni support in the region, it could strengthen ISIS.
The initiative comes as the United States prepares for midterm elections in November, which will decide all House seats and 1/3 of the Senate. U.S. immigration reform has emerged as a major issue, despite Mr. Obama's announcement he will delay executive action until later in the year.
Well, for more on the pressing issues facing President Obama and the returning members of Congress, we are joined by VOA's Michael Bowman on Capitol Hill. Hello, Michael.
Good evening.
Now, it looks like it's going to be such a busy time as Congress resumes. What's going to be like the main agenda?
Well, we have 58 days between now and the midterm elections when all House seats and 1/3 of the Senate will be decided. However, Congress is only expected to be in session for a few of those weeks because members want to go out and campaign. There is very little in terms of a must-do agenda. The one thing that must happen is that the government must be funded. Federal spending authority expires in October, and unless there is some extension of that authority, we would have another government shutdown. It's thought that the likelihood of that is very small because really members of Congress don't want to go home and face voters with a government shutdown. Popular opinions of Congress are so low already that would make it even worse.
Now, Michael, President Obama is asking Congress to fund the fight against Ebola in Africa. What are the prospects that Congress will support him on this?
Well, this is the sort of thing that traditionally would receive overwhelmingly a sort of overwhelming bipartisan support. It's difficult and it's dangerous to predict exactly when Congress might act. However, it's hard to imagine Congress turning a blind eye to the suffering and to the tragedy in West Africa. The United States has already activated the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, USAID, and President Obama announced that the U.S. military will now be getting involved in terms of dispersing supplies and various things that are needed. And I would imagine that Congress will be very receptive to that request, which I believe is in about the $88 million range.
Now, you did mention in your report the threat of ISIS, the Islamic State. What are the chances that the Congress is going to approve use of military force?
Well, there are those in Congress who always, for any use of military force, believe that Congress must be involved and Congress must approve. However, the weight of opinion in Congress right now is that President Obama needs to act, that the United States needs to act, that securing congressional authorization would be nice, but that should not get in the way, that the campaign should not be bogged down or delayed waiting for Congress to act.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for excellent reporting.